My wife said, "I want a baby, but I want to use my ex's sperm from our old IVF storage." "I'm her husband of 5 years," I replied. "That's an interesting request." Then I showed her the divorce papers I'd been carrying for this exact moment. I, 36 male, have been married for 5 years. Together for 7 total. On paper, we had a good life. Nice house in the suburbs, 2 decent incomes, plans for the future. Kids were always part of that plan, or so I thought. Here's what you need to understand before I get to the main event. I didn't just randomly have divorce papers in my back pocket. I'm not psychic. I've been watching the red flags pile up for about 8 months now, and I've been preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. It started when my wife reconnected with her ex at some alumni event last spring. They dated for 4 years before me, even got engaged briefly. The engagement ended badly. He cheated, she was devastated, the whole thing imploded spectacularly. Or at least, that's the story I was told when we first started dating. When she came home from that alumni event, something was different. She was lighter, happier in a way that felt disconnected from our life together. She started texting more frequently, laughing at her phone at random moments, being vague about who she was talking to when I asked casually. I asked once, "Oh, just reconnected with some old college friends. You know how these reunion things are." I let it go. Mistake number 1. 3 months later, I saw a notification flash on her phone while she was in the shower. His name, the ex. The preview showed, "Can't stop thinking about what you said. Miss you too." My stomach dropped, but I didn't confront her then. I know that probably sounds weak to some of you, but I needed to understand what I was dealing with before I made any moves. So I started paying attention, really paying attention to everything. She started bringing him up in conversation constantly. "Oh, my ex used to say that too. My ex loved that restaurant. My ex and I had this running joke about..." It was like a broken record. Every conversation somehow circled back to him. Like she was comparing us continuously, like she was keeping score, and I was losing. Then came the fertility conversations, and everything started clicking into place. We'd been trying for about 2 years with no luck. We'd done all the tests, everything was technically fine on both sides, just bad timing or bad luck. IVF was the next logical step, and we'd been discussing it seriously for months. I was fully on board. Excited even. The idea of being a dad was something I genuinely wanted, but her enthusiasm for IVF started feeling off. She wasn't excited about us having a baby together. She was excited about having a baby. There's a subtle but important difference, and it took me a while to figure out exactly what was nagging at me. About 4 months ago, I found something on her laptop that changed everything. She'd left it open while running to the store for something she forgot, and I wasn't snooping intentionally. I needed to print a document, and my laptop was dead in the other room. Her email was minimized but open, and when I opened a browser, I accidentally clicked on the wrong tab. It was a conversation with a fertility clinic I'd never heard of. One we hadn't discussed together. One that was hundreds of miles away. She was asking about the status of frozen embryos and sperm samples from a previous IVF cycle with her ex from 7 years ago before she and I even met. They'd apparently done 1 round of IVF together that failed, and they had leftover frozen materials in storage. She'd been paying the storage fees this entire time, for 7 years, through our entire relationship, through our engagement, through 5 years of marriage, behind my back the whole time. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. I took screenshots of everything. I saved them to a secure cloud folder she didn't know about. Then I called a lawyer the next day and explained the situation. For the next 4 months, I documented everything methodically. Her texts with him that I could occasionally see when she left her phone unlocked. Her emails about the storage facility that she accessed from our shared laptop. Her browser history showing research on using frozen sperm from previous partner and can I use ex's sperm for IVF with new husband, and legal requirements for stored genetic material. My lawyer drew up divorce papers. I kept them in my work bag, the one I brought home every night. I was waiting for her to show her hand fully, hoping somehow that I was wrong, that there was an innocent explanation, that the woman I married wasn't planning what I thought she was planning. Last Tuesday, she finally said it out loud, and I stopped hoping. We were having dinner. Takeout from this Thai place we both like, her favorite pad Thai, my usual green curry. She'd been acting nervous all evening, picking at her food, checking her phone like she was expecting something. "I want to talk about the baby stuff," she said finally, pushing her plate away. "Okay." I kept my voice neutral, my face blank. Inside my heart was pounding. I'd been thinking about it a lot, about IVF, about our options, about what makes the most for us. And? She took a deep breath like she was about to deliver good news. "I want to use donor sperm. Specifically, I want to use the samples that are already in storage for my previous IVF cycle." I set down my fork, stared at her. "The samples from your ex?" She looked surprised that I knew. Then her expression shifted to something like relief. "You know about that? Oh good, that makes this easier. I didn't know how to bring it up. I know you've been paying storage fees for 7 years for frozen sperm from your ex-fiancé. The one you told me was ancient history. Yes, I'm aware. It just makes sense. The samples are already there. We wouldn't have to go through the whole matching process with an anonymous donor. The genetics are already known. He's tall, smart, athletic, no major health issues in his family history. He's your ex-boyfriend. The one you were engaged to. The one you've been texting constantly for the past 8 months. She went pale. "How do you?" "I pay attention to things more than you apparently realized. It's not like that. We're just friends now. Old history." He's supportive of this idea, actually. He said he'd sign over all parental rights, no strings attached. It's just biological material, DNA. It doesn't mean anything emotionally. You want me to raise a child that's biologically yours and your ex's, while you've been secretly in contact with him for months, while you've hidden these storage payments for our entire marriage, and you think that doesn't mean anything. You're making this weird. It's practical. It's logical. I took a breath. That's an interesting request. Then I reached into my work bag. I'd brought it to the dining table instead of leaving it by the door, which probably should have been her first clue that tonight was different, and pulled out the manila envelope. Her face when she saw "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage" printed across the first page was something I'll remember for the rest of my life. Confusion, shock, denial, then fury. What the hell is this? Divorce papers. I've been carrying them for about 4 months now, waiting to see if you'd actually go through with whatever this plan of yours was. You've been planning this? For months? You've been pretending everything was normal while preparing to divorce me? You've been lying to me for months, reconnecting with your ex behind my back, hiding fertility storage from me for our entire marriage, researching how to have his baby without telling me. I'm just responding to reality here. She started crying, big theatrical tears. You can't do this. I love you. I thought this would be a good solution to our fertility struggles. We've been trying so hard and these samples are already there. And you want his baby, not mine, not ours, his. That's not fair. You're twisting everything. Sign the papers or don't, but either way I'm done. This marriage is over. Update 1, 5 days later. That conversation went about as well as expected. Which is to say it went terribly. She didn't sign the papers that night. She cried, she begged, she accused me of being paranoid and controlling and waiting to trap her. Then she called her mother at 10 p.m., sobbing into the phone about how I'd ambushed her. Her mother showed up at our house at 11 p.m. Drove 40 minutes in the dark to come defend her daughter. I was already in the guest room by then. I'd made it crystal clear I wasn't sharing a bed with her anymore. The mother pounded on the guest room door like she was trying to break it down. "Open this door right now. We need to talk about what you're doing to my daughter." I opened it calmly. "Good evening. It's late. How dare you spring divorce papers on her like that, after everything she's done for this marriage, after all the sacrifices she's made. Everything she's done includes secretly storing her ex's sperm for 7 years, reconnecting with him behind my back, and asking me to father his biological child while pretending it was a practical solution. Is there something I'm missing?" Her mother's face did this interesting thing where it cycled through shock, confusion, and then settled on aggressive denial. "That's not," she explained all that to me. "It's just a practical solution to your fertility issues. You're being emotional and irrational." I'm being emotional, about my wife wanting to have her ex-boyfriend's baby, about her hiding this plan for our entire marriage. It's just sperm. It doesn't mean anything. It's like a blood donation. You're reading too much into it. I realized then that this was a family-wide delusion. They genuinely, truly didn't see anything wrong with this scenario. In their minds, I was the unreasonable one. I'll be staying in this room until we figure out the living situation. Your daughter can have the master bedroom, but this conversation is over. I closed the door firmly. Heard her mother ranting to my wife in the hallway about what a cold, unfeeling man I was, how she never trusted me, how this proved I never really loved her daughter. Eventually, they both went to the master bedroom, probably to strategize about how to change my mind. The next few days were an absolute nightmare of escalating entitled behavior. My wife swung between tearful apologies and furious accusations like a pendulum. One minute she was saying she'd cancel the storage immediately, cut off all contact with her ex forever, do whatever it takes to save our marriage. The next minute she was screaming that I was punishing her for having a past and using this as an excuse to leave because I never really committed. Her mother called every day, sometimes 3 or 4 times, leaving increasingly hostile voicemails about how I was destroying the family and being vindictive over nothing, and how I'd regret this when I realized what I lost. Her sister sent me a text that read, "She made one simple request about fertility options and you respond with divorce papers? You're actually insane. She's better off without you. You clearly have issues." I didn't respond to any of them, just screenshot everything and forwarded it to my lawyer for documentation purposes. But here's where it gets truly unbelievable. Day 4 after the dinner, I came home from work to find my wife had invited someone over for coffee to clear the air. Guess who was sitting in my living room, on my couch, drinking from one of my mugs? Her ex. He stood up awkwardly when I walked in, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Hey man, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding here." I looked at my wife. "You invited him to our house, to my house. I wanted him to explain the situation. He can tell you it's not romantic between us anymore. It's just about the baby, just about giving us options." Her ex cleared his throat. "Look, I know this looks bad from your perspective, but I'm in a serious relationship now too. I don't want to get back together with her or anything like that. I just thought, if you guys are doing IVF anyway and these samples are sitting there going to waste." "Did she tell you we'd agreed to this plan?" He hesitated, glanced at her. "She said you were considering it, working through some initial resistance." "I wasn't, ever. I found out 4 months ago that she'd been hiding all this from me for our entire marriage. That's why I filed for divorce." His face changed completely. "She told me you were on board with the general concept, but you just needed some convincing about the specifics, that this meeting was to finalize details." "I've been carrying signed divorce papers since February." He looked at my wife with something like disgust, then back at me. "I didn't know any of that. She told me you were working through some issues but that the baby thing was definitely moving forward, that you'd agreed in principle." I almost felt sorry for the guy, almost. She lied to both of us, apparently. Congratulations on that. He left pretty quickly after that exchange. Couldn't get out the door fast enough. My wife tried desperately to explain. She thought if I just met him, saw how normal and non-threatening he was, I'd somehow change my mind. She genuinely believed that bringing the man whose child she wanted to conceive into our living room would fix the situation. The level of delusion was absolutely breathtaking. Update 2. 2 weeks later. The divorce is officially proceeding. My wife finally signed the acknowledgement papers after her lawyer apparently explained in detail that she had no legal grounds to contest anything, given the circumstances and the documentation I had. But the entitled behavior only escalated as reality set in. First, she tried to claim that the house was primarily hers because she found it online, did all the decorating, and made it a home. Never mind that we bought it together with both names on the mortgage, 50-50 down payment from both our savings accounts, equal monthly payments for 5 years. She wanted me to just take an apartment somewhere and let her keep the entire house because of her emotional investment in it. My lawyer shut that down immediately. Standard community property laws applied. We'd have to sell and split the equity equally. She was absolutely furious, called me petty and vindictive for not just giving her the house. Then came the financial demands. She wanted substantial spousal support because, according to her filing, I'd been financially controlling during our marriage by having a joint account that we both contributed to equally and both had full access to. She claimed she'd sacrificed career opportunities for our relationship, even though she's actually been promoted twice in the past 5 years while I stayed in the same position at my company. Her lawyer talked some sense into her on that one eventually. In our state, with our similar income levels and relatively short marriage length, spousal support simply wasn't going to happen. The judge would laugh it out of court. But the truly dirty trick came last week. She told her entire extended family and tried to tell mine a completely fabricated version of events. Her version: I had serious fertility issues that I'd been hiding from her in shame, and when she lovingly suggested donor sperm as a solution to help us have the baby we both wanted, I flew into a narcissistic rage and filed for divorce because I couldn't handle my own inadequacy. She was just trying to help. She was just being practical. And I destroyed everything because of my fragile ego. My phone started blowing up. Her cousins, her aunts, her former college roommate, even some of our mutual friends from the neighborhood, all asking variations of why I was throwing away my marriage over my ego and punishing her for trying to find solutions and being so prideful about a medical issue. My own mother called, sounding confused and concerned. She reached out to me yesterday. She said you refused to consider any donor options at all, that you got violent when she suggested it. Is that true? Mom, she didn't suggest a random donor. She wanted to use frozen sperm from her ex-fiancé that she'd been secretly storing for 7 years without telling me, and she'd been in contact with him behind my back for months before she brought it up. Long pause. She definitely left that part out of her version. Yeah, she's been leaving that part out with everyone. I started sending people the documentation. Not publicly. I wasn't trying to humiliate her or create some viral moment, but when people reached out with accusations based on her version, I corrected the record, privately, with screenshots and dates and proof. The tide turned pretty quickly once people saw the actual facts. Her own cousin texted me. Holy crap, she told us a very different story. I'm so sorry for what I said earlier. That's completely insane behavior on her part. Her aunt called to apologize profusely for the voicemail she'd left, calling me a prideful fool who'd die alone. Even her mother went suspiciously quiet for several days. Apparently someone in the family confronted her directly about the discrepancies in the story, and she didn't have good answers. But my wife herself? She doubled down even harder. She started telling people I'd manufactured evidence and twisted her innocent words. That she never wanted to use her ex's sperm specifically. She just happened to mention that there were some samples in storage somewhere, and I assumed the worst about her intentions because I was looking for an excuse to leave. The gaslighting was absolutely unreal. Fortunately, I had the screenshots of her detailed emails to the fertility clinic explicitly asking about using those specific samples and discussing logistics. I had her browser history. I had the text exchanges I could document. The lies didn't stick, but she never stopped trying to make them stick. Final update. 6 weeks later, the divorce is finalized. Done. Over. Here's how everything actually shook out. The house sold after 3 weeks on the market. We split the equity after paying off the remaining mortgage. I walked away with about $87,000. She got approximately the same amount. Not the windfall either of us would have wanted, but fair by any objective measure. We divided our retirement accounts according to the marriage length formula. She kept her car and all its associated debt. I kept mine. Furniture was split more or less evenly based on receipts showing who purchased what. No spousal support in either direction. The judge saw no basis for it, given our similar incomes and the circumstances. My total legal costs came to about $8,500. Hers were apparently significantly higher because she kept trying to contest things that simply weren't contestable, and her lawyer had to bill for all that wasted time. The frozen storage situation with her ex's samples? She's still paying for it as far as I know. That's her problem now and forever. But here's the part that actually feels like justice served. During the divorce discovery process, some very interesting additional information came to light. Remember how I mentioned she'd been texting her ex for months? Well, communication records had to be disclosed as part of establishing the timeline of events. Turns out, it was considerably more than just nostalgic texting and reminiscing about old times. They'd met up in person at least 4 times that I had no knowledge of whatsoever. One of those meetings was at a hotel in a city about 2 hours away. She'd told me she was at a work conference that weekend. Now, I can't prove definitively that anything physical happened. And honestly, at this point in the process, it didn't matter for the divorce outcome anyway. We're in a no-fault state. But it confirmed absolutely what I'd suspected from the beginning. This was never just about practical fertility solutions. This was about her ex. It had always been about her ex. Our entire marriage had been conducted in his shadow. I shared that specific discovery finding with exactly one person, his current girlfriend. She deserved to know the full picture of who she was building a relationship with. She reached out to thank me a few weeks later. Apparently, he'd explained those meetings away as just closure conversations, and helping her through marital difficulties as a friend. She hadn't believed him after seeing the actual text content and hotel records. They broke up shortly after. So now my ex-wife has no husband, her ex has no girlfriend, and those frozen samples are still sitting in a storage facility somewhere, costing $500 per year to maintain, with nobody willing to use them. I don't know if they'll end up together eventually. Honestly, I genuinely don't care at this point. That chapter is closed for me. Here's what I learned from this entire experience. When someone keeps frozen genetic material from a previous relationship for 7 years without mentioning it to their current partner, that's not a practical backup option or responsible planning. That's an emotional anchor. She never truly let go of him. She married me while still holding on to the possibility, the hope, of eventually having his child. The conversation about using his sperm wasn't the core betrayal. The betrayal was the 7 years of deliberate hiding, the months of secret contact, the lies told directly to my face while she researched the logistics behind my back, the elaborate cover stories. I don't regret having those divorce papers ready before she even asked the question. Some people might call it paranoid or cynical or untrusting, but when you watch evidence piling up systematically, when you observe someone deceiving you day after day, preparation isn't paranoia. It's self-preservation. It's being smart enough to protect yourself. Her mother still occasionally sends me rambling emails. The last one accused me of destroying her daughter's chance at motherhood forever and said I'd regret this when I'm old and alone and realize what I threw away. I haven't responded to any of them. I just forward them to the documentation folder I'm keeping, just in case I ever need it. My ex-wife sent one final text last week from a number I hadn't blocked yet. I hope you're happy with yourself. You ruined absolutely everything because you couldn't handle a simple request. I didn't reply. There's genuinely nothing left to say to someone that far gone. She still doesn't understand what she did wrong. She still doesn't see it. In her mind, she asked a perfectly reasonable question, and I wildly overreacted. The months of hiding, the secret contact with her ex, the elaborate lies to everyone we know. None of that registers as problematic behavior to her. It's all justified by her desire for a baby. Some people are like that. They rewrite history so thoroughly and consistently that they believe their own revised version completely. She'll probably tell this story for years, as my controlling ex-husband divorced me because I suggested donor sperm and he was too insecure to handle it. And I'll be the villain in her narrative forever. That's fine. I know the actual truth. The people who matter know the truth. The legal system saw the truth. For anyone finding themselves in a remotely similar situation, here's my advice. If you see red flags, document absolutely everything. Dates, times, screenshots, locations. Don't confront until you fully understand what you're dealing with. And if you reach the point where you need to prepare exit paperwork in advance, don't feel guilty about being prepared. Hoping for the best while preparing for the worst isn't cynical or pessimistic. It's smart. It's self-protective. My ex expected me to be completely devastated, to break down and beg her to reconsider, to be so terrified of divorce and being alone that I'd agree to literally raise her ex-boyfriend's biological child just to keep her in my life. Instead, I said, "That's an interesting request," and calmly handed her the paperwork I'd been carrying for months. The look on her face was absolutely worth every single penny of those legal fees. Edit. For those asking about logistics, yes, the frozen samples require consent from both original parties to use. Her ex had apparently already enthusiastically agreed to let her use them. The only person who wasn't informed about this entire plan was me, her actual current husband. Make of that what you will. Edit 2. Someone asked if I'd known about the previous IVF attempt before we got married. Yes, but only vaguely. She mentioned once that they'd tried some fertility treatments together before their engagement ended. She never mentioned they'd frozen samples. Never mentioned she was still paying storage fees. Never mentioned any of the details that would obviously have been massive red flags. Lies of omission are still lies. Maybe worse, because they're so calculated. Edit 3. To the people suggesting I should have tried marriage counseling first, I genuinely considered it. But counseling requires both people to be honest with the therapist and each other. She wasn't capable of that. She was still lying directly to my face about the extent of her contact with her ex, even after I confronted her with documented evidence. You can't counsel your way out of fundamental dishonesty. There was nothing left to save that was real. Final edit, I'm doing okay. Not great, not terrible. Some days are significantly harder than others. But waking up in a space that's entirely mine, without constantly wondering what she's hiding now, without parsing every word she says for potential lies, that's worth the pain of rebuilding everything. The quiet isn't lonely anymore. It's actually peaceful. Thanks for reading all of this, and trust your instincts. They're usually trying to tell you something important.